Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of What If Naruto Left Konoha with Itachi. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see part 2 of it, comment down below and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video to let me know that you're interested in this series and you want the next part. And go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Run was the single thought that was going through a little blonde boy's head. Run faster. The blonde-haired boy was none other than Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Currently, a mob that contained an estimated count of 15 was chasing the boy, blinded by their rage. Naruto ran across an open fielded area, his eyes dashing everywhere, trying to find a place to hide. The echoes and shouts of the mob behind him were warning enough that they were coming his way. He saw a big forest that was fenced off, but saw a hole in it, just large enough for him to fit through. He climbed through the hole, but his shirt was snagged on a loose piece of metal in the fence. He cried out in shock as he felt his shirt rip open, and also leave a small scratch. He looked behind him to see the mob closing in. His eyes widened as he took off, telling himself he'll look at the wound later. He ran into the forest and stopped quickly to take a breather. There he is. A voice shouted from not too far behind him. Naruto stood straight back up, not even thinking about how they got through the fence. He jumped over a ditch and saw a woman with purple hair tied into a bun on the top of her head, and a guy kissing on the tree, obviously having sex, but Naruto's mind didn't think that way. He tried to sneak around the two as quietly as possible, until he stepped on a stick, making a large snap. The purple-haired woman's head snapped in his direction. Seeing the blonde, she sighed. "Of course a little brat like you will be in here. And here I am trying to go on a date," she said in an annoyed tone. Naruto began slowly backing up, his heart picking up its pace as he heard the mob getting louder. She noticed him trying to get away, and also heard the mob coming towards her. "Nah," she said before he quickly ran up to him, and grabbed him by the collar. Naruto began squirming. "Please, let me go, they're going to hurt me," he whispers yelled. She smirked. "What did you do? Steal from them? If so, you deserve it. Besides, you interrupted Anko's fun time. And that always comes with a price," she said as she licked her lips before walking towards the mob. He started struggling even more. "I didn't do anything. Please. I just want to go back to my tree. Let me go back," he cried out. She ignored the boy and tossed him on the ground and placed one foot on his back and applied pressure. "I don't care. You still interrupted my fun time. And I don't care what they do to you. As long as you don't come here again, it doesn't affect me," she said simply. Naruto stopped struggling and just laid there, a small stream of tears pouring down his face. The mob approached the two and saw her standing on top of the boy. A man stepped forward. "Thank you for catching him. He was giving us a chase," he said as he went back to panting hard. She shrugged. "No matter. Has no consequence to me. Just take him and leave. Anko needs to get back to her stick of meat," she said as she quickly ran deeper into the forest. Two large and heavy men picked Naruto up roughly, ignoring the slight whimper of pain. They carried the boy away from the forest and into an alley in the village before throwing him down. "Who wants first?" one of the men asked. A woman came forward. "I'll go." She handed him a couple bills and made her way to the blonde. Naruto tried crawling back, but only succeeded in hitting the wall. She then kicked him in the jaw, causing him grab it. She then began kicking and punching the poor boy's body mercilessly. She then spit on the boy's body. "That's for my husband," she said in an angry voice before giving him one last kick. "Who's next?" A man stepped up this time and handed the man a big stack of bills. "I may use my knife, if that's okay with you." The man collecting the money shrugged. He smiled sadistically and slowly walked towards Naruto, who was now in a curled-up ball, crying. Hokage's office. "It's done. Every Uchiha is dead, except for Sayuri Uchiha," a boy said in a weasel mask. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, nodded sadly. "I'm sorry, Itachi, for me to place this burden on one so young." He couldn't continue his sentence, the shame racking up in his body. Itachi slowly took off his mask. "It was for the best of the village, Hokage-sama," he said. If you look closely, you could tell there were tears marks that had traveled down his cheeks. Hiruzen nodded at the boy. "Stand up, Itachi. You no longer need to bow. You have done your village a great service. If there's anything you want, just ask." Itachi nodded and paused. He then spoke. "Keep Sayuri safe. That is all I ask." Hiruzen nodded again. "I will do that." Once again, Itachi, He was cut off by a knock on the door. He gave Itachi a look. Itachi nodded and quickly used a Kamo jutsu to hide himself. "Come in," Hiruzen said. A man in a lion's mask burst into the office. "Hokage-sama, it's Naruto. He's being attacked," Lion said. Hiruzen looked alarmed. "I thought an Anbu team was protecting him at all times," he yelled. "That's what I thought too. Come on, Hokage-sama," Lion yelled. Hiruzen looked at the place where Itachi was hidden. "Come on." he whispered before he ran out the room, Itachi in pursuit. The alley. Naruto laid in a puddle of his own blood. His throat was dry and sore from all the screaming he had done. Currently, he was being kicked by an older man, but he couldn't feel it. He couldn't feel anything. A 5-year-old can only take so much abuse. Then, the kicking stopped. He didn't know why or how, he just closed his eyes tightly, as if he could avoid next blows. But nothing happened. He slowly opened his eyes, and found himself in the arms of a teenager with dark black hair. He slowly turned his head, ignoring the pain it caused, and saw the face of the old man he loved like a grandpa. He slowly closed his eyes again, not wanting to wake up. 5 minutes earlier, Hiruzen, Lion, and Itachi appeared in an alleyway where a bunch of yelling was heard. Whoops of excitement and applause was heard. Hiruzen shoved his way past the horde of people, and found an old man kicking what was left of Naruto, who was laying in a puddle of blood. He instantly felt the kunai that he hid in his sleeve slide out as he slit the man who was kicking Naruto's throat. He then turned around and glared at the villagers who had been beating on the boy. "How dare you?" he yelled. "How dare you try to hurt a boy not a day older than 5? You should feel ashamed," he said. He then let a small smirk appear on his face. "But you wouldn't be feeling anything in the next couple of seconds. Anbu killed them." A large group of Anbu was hurt as they cut down the screaming mob of people. Itachi picked up Naruto's limp body and turned to Hiruzen. Hiruzen turned to Lion. "Burn the bodies. Find out what happened and execute the Anbu that were supposed to be watching the boy," he ordered. Lion nodded and turned to the squad of Anbu. Hiruzen walked up to Itachi. "Let's go get him healed," he said before they left. Hiruzen and Itachi rushed into a hospital and grabbed a medic. "Nin. Heal him," he shouted. The medic took one look at Naruto and curled her nose up in disgust. "We don't heal the likes of him," she said. She then felt a cold blade against her throat. "Are you defying an order from your cage?" Itachi said, his voice cold and empty of emotion. The medic froze and took another look at Hiruzen and paled considerably. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. I didn't know it was you," she said weakly. "Right this way," she squeaked out as she led the an injured boy to a room where she began healing him. Couple hours later, in the Hokage office. "Itachi," Hiruzen began, but Itachi started talking first. "I request to take Naruto Uzumaki with me, so I can train him, in order to defend himself," Itachi said stoically. Hiruzen let a small smile appear on his face. "I was about to ask you that myself. But, I need you to send him back at least a week before the Genin exams. I want him to be part of this village like his father would want him to." Itachi nodded. Fourth Hokage-sama would be proud if his legacy became a ninja of the village. Hiruzen's eyes widened. "Hokage-sama, he looks like an exact replica of him. How could anyone not guess that?" Hiruzen's eyes hit the floor. "It pains me to watch him grow up the exact opposite way his father had wanted him to. He should have grown up being loved, not hated. Minato would be ashamed for what had happened to his son." Itachi nodded. "Yes, I suppose so." He paused, then spoke again. "I guess I'll be taking Naruto then. When am I to leave?" he asked. "As soon as possible. Which should be in a few hours if I know you well enough." Itachi let a small smile appear on his face. "Of course, Hokage-sama. I'll pick up Naruto and leave immediately," was all Itachi said as he shunshined away. A couple hours later on the road. "What are we going to do?" asked Naruto. Itachi smiled. "I'm going to train you in the ways of the ninja," he said as he tossed Naruto a very dull kunai, who caught it by the blade. "Cool," he said, slowly. "Imagine slicing the kunai on someone." "Okay. Training begins now," Itachi said. "Now tell me, what do you know about chakra?" 8 years later. A small figure was walking up towards the gate of Konoha. He had bright blonde hair and deep blue eyes. He had a red scarf that covered his face from the nose down. He had a dark, black cloak that surrounded his entire body, concealing his weapons. He had dark navy blue pants on that were easy to run in with a pair of black shoes. You couldn't see his arms, because of the cloak, but he had on a plain grey long-sleeved shirt underneath. 2 Chunin guards stood at the gate, and they saw the figure approach them. One of them had a bandage across his nose and another had unkempt hair that he tried to put under a bandana wrap on his head. The one with the bandage stepped forward. "Name and reason for being here?" the man asked. "Naruto Uzumaki and returning home from a small training trip," was Naruto's muffled voice response. Izumo, the man with the bandage, thought the name sounded familiar, but disregarded it. He heard plenty of names over the past few years. He had been a gate guardian. "Okay. Go straight to the Hokage's office. It's up," Izumo began but was cut off. "I know where it is. Thank you anyway," the boy said quietly as he walked past the 2 Chunins. Kotetsu, the other Chunin, looked at Izumo weirdly. "I get the creeps from him," he said as he gave an involuntarily shiver. Izumo nodded at his friend. "Something tells me that's not the last we'll be seeing of him." Naruto went up to the receptionist and waved politely at her. "I have an appointment with Hokage-sama," he said. She didn't recognize the boy, but smiled warmly at him. "I'll see if he's available," she said as she stepped into the Hokage's office. Naruto stood there patiently as he awaited the woman. She came back and sat at her desk. "He'll see you now." Naruto bowed slightly. "Thank you," he said before walking into the office. He saw the old man smoking his pipe as he was reading and signing paper furiously. Naruto looked at the aged man with a slight amused look in his eyes. He coughed slightly, causing Hiruzen to look up and see the boy. "Can I help you?" Hiruzen asked. Naruto let a slow smile appear on his face. "Geez, Grandpa. I knew people's mind disappear as they get older, but the fact that you can't remember me is almost heartbreaking," Naruto said in an exaggerated voice. Hiruzen's eyes widened and he stood up immediately. "Naruto, is that really you?" he asked, completely bewildered. He was expecting Naruto to be back 2 weeks from then, now 2 weeks early. Then again, Itachi was always early. "In the flesh, I think." Naruto began patting himself down, a large smile plastered on his face, not that Hiruzen could see it anyway. Hiruzen chuckled at the boy's antics and gave the boy a hug. "I'm glad you're back. How are you?" He then noticed Naruto's scarf around his face. "And what's with the scarf? I can't have another Kakashi running around. One is enough already." Naruto chuckled. "The scarf is to hide my whiskers, and besides, it adds mystery to my physique," he said. Hiruzen laughed and patted Naruto on the shoulder. Of course. Well, Hiruzen looked at the clock in his office. It was 12:05 p.m. The academy just got back from recess, so they should be in class. "I heard they were doing taijutsu today." Naruto nodded, but inwardly, he was groaning. For the first 2 years, Itachi had made him study the history of all the shinobi nations, chakra, and theory of all the elemental jutsus, along with taijutsu. It was scarring. But for the other 2 years, he began teaching Naruto taijutsu, and made Naruto make his own. The other 2 years, he made the boy practice with shuriken, kunai, and a small sword. Finally, for the last 2 years, he taught Naruto basic sealing methods, jinjutsu, and some ninjutsu. The two walked into a building that said academy on it. They stopped in front of a classroom, and Hiruzen opened the door to reveal a class, and 2 teachers. One was tan and had a scar across his nose with brown hair tied up. The other had white hair and pale skin, but nothing more noticeable than that. "Good afternoon, Hokage-sama. What can I help you with today?" the tan man said. Hiruzen placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "I have a new student for you. He was out of the village and wanted to become ninja when he came back. He already has some ninja training, so he shouldn't have any trouble at all." The man looked at Naruto and smiled. "I'm Iruka. Over here is Mizuki. We'll be your senseis. How about you introduce yourself to the class?" Iruka asked. Naruto gulped and nodded. He walked to the front of the class. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My dream, or goal if you will, is to become Hokage," and his eyes shifted to a girl with long black hair who was sitting in the back of the classroom. She had coal black eyes with a blue shirt that had the Uchiha symbol on it. "So that's Itachi-sensei's sister," he thought. Sayuri Uchiha, who had been studying the stranger, rolled her eyes. "Great, another fanboy. Just what I need," she thought sarcastically in her mind. "And to bring a certain someone back to the village." Naruto finished, causing Sayuri's eyebrows to shift upward. "Really? Not proclaiming marriage to me? Best news since I started this school," Sayuri thought semi-happily. Naruto shifted his gaze from the girl and looked at Iruka and Mizuki. "Where do I sit, senseis?" Mizuki smirked at the given respect, and pointed at Naruto and looked at the class. "You see? He knows a little thing called respect," he shouted, causing both Iruka and Hiruzen to laugh softly. The kids groaned, knowing that a lecture was coming up, many thanking Naruto sourly. "Mizuki," Iruka chided softly. "We were going to show Naruto his seat." Mizuki smiled awkwardly and rubbed the back of his head. "Oh yeah," he said and pointed to the seat next to Sayuri. "That's the only seat we have." Naruto looked at Sayuri again and went up to her and held out his hand. "I'm Naruto. What's your name?" he greeted. When she didn't take his hand, he slowly lowered it and sat down. "Don't gotta be rude about it," he muttered. Was all the girl said. Naruto's eyes showed mischief in them, like he was planning a big prank. "Chen," he replied, causing the whole class's eyes to widen, including Sayuri. "Chen." She narrowed her eyes suspiciously at him, and Naruto was grinning under his scarf. Ino Yamanaka, who was sitting next to her best friend Sakura Haruno, spoke to Sakura softly. "What are they doing?" she whispered. Sakura, who was studying Naruto the moment he walked in, replied. "I don't know. They're communicating somehow. It's weird," she whispered back. Ino started checking Naruto out. "Weird or not, I think he's cute," she said slyly. Sakura looked at her in complete shock. "What about Kiba-kun or Neji-kun? Those are the 2 hottest guys in the village," she almost shouted. Naruto turned around and faced the 2 girls. "You know, I can hear everything you're saying," he said, making the 2 girls flush a dark red. His eyes turned to Ino and he winked at her. "Thanks for the compliment." Ino blushed even further and almost passed out. Iruka then decided to intervene. Okay. Come on guys, today we spar and see how far we've gotten." he said as he clapped his hands together, making a loud slapping sound. Everyone stood up and headed outside to the sparring fields. Naruto ran his hand through the list and selected 2 people. Okay Naruto, you will face Kiba so I can gauge your skill level. Kiba is the top boy in the class, only being topped by Sayuri for Rookie of the Year. So go ahead and fight. Rules are, no using weapons, jutsu, and no stepping outside the circle. Kiba walked into the middle of the circle. He had 2 red lines going down either side of his face, and had a dog sitting on his head. Get ready to get destroyed Naruto. Naruto just smiled at the boy, and noticed that Hiruzen was gone, probably reading his porn, he thought. Meh. Naruto said, his eyes squinted in a smile. Naruto looked at the 2 boys. Ready, begin, he shouted. Kiba charged Naruto, but hit nothing but air. He turned around to see Naruto walking out of the circle. Oops. Looks like I failed. Oh well. Naruto said simply before leaning back on the gate. Well, that was unexpected. Naruto, why didn't you fight? Naruto shrugged. I guess Kiba's awesomeness totally wiped all the energy I had before the fight. He said in a normal tone, trying to conceal a laugh. Kiba growled. Hey, you come and fight me right now, he demanded. Naruto rolled his eyes over to Kiba. No. Everyone was shocked at his simple reply. Usually, when Kiba wanted something, he got it. You're just a wimp. No, you're a dope. A dead last loser who can't fight. Kiba yelled, a grin on his face. Naruto, who was busy inspecting his nails, looked up. I'm sorry, did you say something? Kakashi sneezed loudly, spraying the water he had been drinking onto the ground. He felt extreme happiness and looked up at the sky. I think someone is becoming like me, he said. The school day was over with, and Naruto was chilling on a swing set, his eyes closed, enjoying the breeze of the cool wind. Sadly, however, it was soon ended. Look guys, it's the dope. Kiba yelled, causing his fangirls, including Sakura, to shout in unison. Yeah. Naruto sighed and got off the swing and faced Kiba. Can I help you? He asked plainly. Kiba glared at him. Yeah. I want that fight dope. If you can fight me at all, he said smugly. Naruto sighed again, and started walking away. I said no. Geez, for a dog, you don't follow orders very well. Everyone gasped as they had Naruto insult their Kiba-kun. What did you say? Kiba growled. Naruto rolled his eyes. I don't repeat orders to puppies. Perhaps you're too dumb to understand. Sadly, you. He was cut off as Kiba and Akamaru charged him. He easily sidestepped the duo, and took a couple steps back. How dare you interrupt me? He said in mock anger. Kiba growled again and tried to hit Naruto again, but failed. Many attempts later, Naruto was standing straight up, looking bored while Kiba was panting. You're weak. All you do is dodge. Perhaps your master is a weak, pathetic boy like you. Kiba shouted. Naruto's eyes quickly narrowed as he glared at Kiba. What did you say? Naruto said darkly. Kiba smirked, knowing he hit his soft spot on the boy. I said, your master was pathetic and a dope. Just like you. Trash will train trash. Basically. He was saying, but couldn't finish as Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him, and punched him in the stomach, causing him to double over and spit out saliva. Don't. Naruto began as he kicked Kiba in the face, causing the boy's nose to bleed. Ever. He gave another swift kick to Kiba's stomach. Talk about. He then appeared behind the boy, and tripped him, and placed a foot on his back, and slowly applied pressure. My master liked that again. Or next time, he kicked Kiba in his ribs, causing the boy to wince. Your punishment will be much worse than this. Sayuri, who had seen the whole thing, when she walked out the academy, stood there in awe. A single thought going through her head. Who are you, Naruto Uzumaki? Flashback. Itachi stood in front of Naruto, a small smile on his lips. You'll be returning to Konoha now. You've done me proud. But I have 2 orders for you. Naruto nodded, accepting them. Don't reveal your true strength until you have to, and protect my sister, Sayuri. Naruto smiled at his teacher. Of course, Itachi-sensei. You won't have to worry about her at all. He gave his teacher a thumbs up, causing Itachi to smile slightly. Itachi reached forward and poked his student's forehead with his 2 fingers, making Naruto to rub his forehead. I should be able to tell when you'll do that, he muttered before hugging Itachi, and then leaving for his home. Graduation day. The last few weeks for Naruto had been well. He had a peaceful few weeks ever since he put Kiba in his place. The Inizuka practically flinched every time he saw Naruto. But that wasn't all that happened. Few days after Naruto beats up Kiba, the academy let out and Naruto walked out of the building with a content look in his eyes. He had enjoyed the last few days, just because Kiba wasn't there. Naruto looked around, and then saw 2 women glaring daggers at him, with a bruised-up Kiba behind them. The obviously older one marched up to him and pointed at Kiba. Did you do that to my son? She asked angrily, her nostrils flaring. Naruto nodded his head. I wanted to teach him manners. He shouldn't badmouth someone without knowing them first. The mother, Tsume, growled. He said you started the fight, she declared. Naruto's eyes narrowed down as he glared at Kiba. I hate liars. I guess I'll have to instill some more punishment then. He began walking towards Kiba, who was shaking behind his sister, Hana. A hand with claws grabbed Naruto's shoulder roughly. Naruto glanced at Sume's direction and saw that her face turned wild. Don't touch my son, or the wrath of the Inizuka will be upon you. And we are a clan that make a bad enemy. Naruto turned completely around. The Namikaze and Uzumaki clan are even worse enemies. Do you wish to continue? He said with a glare. Instantaneously, her wild looks disappeared and her face turned to one of shock. How do you know that? Naruto rose an eyebrow. I'd have to be blind not to see the resemblance. And besides, someone told me, something that shouldn't have been a secret. Now go, and fix that damn son of yours and teach him manners. Naruto shouted the last sentence, causing the women to flinch. She nodded, not liking being bested, but accepted defeat. She went up to Kiba and grabbed the boy's ear and dragged him off to the compound, most likely washing his mouth out with soap. Flashback end. Okay class, now we'll begin your Genin exams. When I call your name, meet us in the other room for demonstration. The same way. Naruto gets an okay score, so he can have the title dead last and be on Sayuri's team, so he can fulfill his promise to protect her. Now, on to the story. Laziness is real. Now for the team assignments. Iruka began. Naruto tuned him out, not looking interested in the civilians who wanted to be ninja. Team 7 will have Sakura Haruno, Sayuri Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki. I wanted to be with Kiba-kun. But I'm okay with Naruto-kun I guess. Sakura said, making Naruto roll his eyes. Ever since he beat Kiba, some of his fangirls began shifting towards him, and it creeped him out a little bit. As I was saying, Iruka continued, glaring at Sakura. Team 8 will consist of Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Burame. Team 9 is still going. Team 10 will be Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akimichi. I hope you all do well. Come back tomorrow and get picked up by your senseis. I wish you luck. Iruka said as both he and Mizuki walked out of the room. Naruto picked up his stuff and walked out of the room and stretched. Finally a Genin. Well, not yet. Still have that extra test. He muttered. He then smiled under his scarf and walked out the building, unknowingly being followed by an extra set of eyes. He walked to a ramen stand he had found out he had quite favored after a visit the week before. He had officially declared that ramen was his favorite type of food, right next to Pocky of course, which was a sweet he had picked up from his master. Hello. Naruto greeted the girl and her father, the two people who ran the tiny ramen shop. One beef ramen please, he requested. The girl nodded with a smile, eager to share the ramen she made with one of her frequent customers. When Naruto got his ramen and ate it hungrily. The girl, wanted to see his face, but was sadly discouraged for he had turned away to the corner of the wall. After Naruto was finished, he wrapped the red scarf around his face again, and put the bowl on the counter and sighed happily. That was good, he exclaimed. I think you just found your #1 customer Ame-san, he said. Ame smiled widely and nodded. We're glad to have you, she replied. Naruto stood up and slightly bowed before walking out of the ramen shop. He walked to a little grass clearing that had 3 big stumps about his height. He then turned around, his eyes shifted towards a bush. I know you're there. Come out, he called out. Sayuri Uchiha then walked out of the bushes, her eyes narrowed at the blonde. Fight me, was all she said before she threw a kunai at him. Naruto easily plucked the kunai out the air and put his hand underneath his cloak once again, the kunai still in hand. Thanks for the kunai, but I don't want to fight my future teammate, he said as he tilted his head, his eyes closed in a smile. Sayuri took this chance to throw 10 shuriken at him. Naruto heard the shuriken coming and made a single hand sign under his cloak. The shuriken hit its intended target, impaling the blonde boy in several locations. Naruto fell to a knee as blood started pouring down his back. Sayuri's eyes whitened, not actually knowing she'd hit the blonde. Internally, she was freaking out. She just killed her future teammate, which would get her thrown into prison, and then she couldn't get her revenge. She then heard a muffled laugh come from behind her. She whirled around to see Naruto completely unharmed. He was holding his sides as he rolled on the ground, laughing. You should have seen your face, he yelled in between laughs. She looked over to the supposedly dead Naruto, and was surprised to see that it faded away. Who would have known that the Uchiha prodigy couldn't recognize a simple genjutsu? He busted into another fit of giggles as he watched the Uchiha turn a bright red. He stood up and brushed the imaginary dirt off his cloak. That was classic. He began but had to dodge a punch from the girl. Never insult an Uchiha. Naruto then decided to mess with her. What? I don't see an Uchiha. I see a girl who wants to fight like one, but sadly, has no skill as one. You need to train more often. She snarled at him and tried to sweep his legs from under him, but he easily jumped back, avoiding the blow. I do train. Every day. I need more power so I can. She faltered as she glared at the boy, his blue eyes were now staring into hers. Kill Itachi, he finished for her. She looked at him in surprise. How do you? He cut her off. Know that name? Well, any intelligent person would be wary of a person who killed the entire Uchiha clan in a single night by themselves. I try to make sure I know all missing nins and all S-class ninja. Naruto turned around and began walking, but stopped and peered over his shoulder. But I wonder about something. Why kill all the other people in the clan, including the women and children, and yet, spare a single one, that just so happens to be his little sister? He watched the confusion come onto the girl's face. I guess you never ask yourself that, do you? And they call you a genius. He finished as he walked away, leaving a stunned Sayuri. The next day, Naruto was laying his on the table. Everyone in the classroom was empty except for his two other teammates, Sayuri and Sakura. He let out another large sigh, which he had been doing every few minutes, and it was beginning to annoy the girls, especially since they've been in the room for 3 hours. Could you be quiet? Sakura yelled at the boy. Naruto jumped up. No, I can't. I practically have ADHD, and I can't sit still without a purpose for 5 minutes. Sure, if I'm on a mission it's completely different. But I'm not. I'm waiting for my stupid sensei, who I'm pretty sure I know who it is, in this stupid classroom. He yelled back. He heard the door open slowly, and he quickly threw a shuriken and a kunai at the person. You're late, he bellowed. Kakashi easily caught the kunai, but was surprised to see a shuriken coming his way as well. He tilted his head and let the shuriken fly past him, and hit the hallway wall, terrifying an innocent bystander. Kakashi looked at his new students. You see, I had to help an old woman carry her groceries up a big mountain to her house. Sorry for the wait. Naruto glared at him. Lies. My crows told me you were reading that pervy book of yours. He yelled out. He then noticed what he said and instantly shut his mouth. Kakashi rose an eyebrow. Crows? What do you mean? Naruto shrugged, not wanting to tell the man he had a summoning contract, scared that it might reveal Itachi was his previous sensei. Thought so. Okay, my first impression of you all is, you're all dumb. Now meet me on the roof in a minute or you all fail. He then disappeared in a shunshin, the leaves scattering across the classroom. Naruto shook his head. Iruka and Mizuki-sensei are going to be pissed. He said aloud before rushing to the top of the roof in a hurry, being followed by his two teammates. They made it on the roof at 58 seconds, barely making it on time. Naruto and Sayuri were fine, used to the physical labor, but Sakura was huffing and puffing, completely out of breath. Kakashi looked at her weirdly, and then motioned for the three to sit down. Okay children, let's get familiar with each other. Tell me about yourselves, he said. Sakura rose her hand. He called on her. Yes, you in the pink. How about you go first? To show us an example about what to say. Kakashi's eyes smiled at her. I would love to, he said sarcastically before continuing. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I like things, and I dislike things. Hobbies. Don't really have any. Dreams. Well, I haven't thought about it. Naruto's sweat dropped and decided to fill in the info for his teammates. Kakashi Hatake, a rank ninja in the bingo book and one of the top jonin in the village. He became a jonin around our age, and was the student of the Fourth Hokage. He looked Kakashi in the eye at that one. He also likes to read books and he enjoys being late. Naruto finished. How do you know that? He asked. Naruto smirked under his scarf. A true ninja doesn't reveal his hand until he knows when to strike and win. So I guess you'll be waiting 3 years since you made me wait 3 hours. He yelled the last part. Well, Mr. Talkative, how about you tell us about yourself then? Naruto nodded. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, although you all knew that already. I like ramen, and oh yeah, my trusty sword. He lifted his cloak up to show a small sword strapped to his waist. I dislike arrogant people, and people who judge a book by its cover. My hobbies include training and probably messing with people. He looked at Sayuri for a split second, a small grin on his face. My dream is to be Hokage, make sure certain someone comes back to the village, and to kill someone in this village for the second one to happen. Kakashi rose an eyebrow, a little disturbed by the last sentence. Admirable. Now little Miss Broody Pants. Your turn. Sayuri put her arms on her knees and held her own hands and put her nose under it, brooding like usual. Sayuri Uchiha is my name. I don't particularly like anything, and I dislike a lot of things. My hobbies are training. My dream is to restore my clan, and to kill a certain someone. Naruto glared at her slightly. You totally just ripped off the third part of my dream. He looked at Kakashi. Isn't that plagiarism or something? Sayuri glared at the boy as Kakashi's sweat dropped. Technically, no. He then looked at Sayuri. Please don't rip your teammate's dream off. It's quite rude. Sayuri rolled her eyes and went back to brooding with the whatever. Okay. Finally, your turn Lil Miss Pink. Kakashi said. Sakura glared at the jonin, but quickly composed herself. My name is Sakura Haruno. I like a certain someone, and I dislike Sayuri. My hobbies include, she blushed a bright red. And my dream is too, she had a small nosebleed, and turned completely red. Fanbrew. Kakashi and Naruto said at the same time, snapping Sakura out of her trance. Kakashi clapped his hands loudly. Okay. Now that we know a little bit about each other. Tomorrow, will be the real Genin exam. It's a survival test and you have to pass to be a Genin. Only 3 teams can be Genin, so there's a 66% failure rate. Okay. Meet me at Training Ground 7 at 6 AM tomorrow morning. He got up and opened the door back into the building. Oh, and I suggest you don't eat breakfast, or you might throw up, he said with a nice smile before closing the door. Sakura turned to her 2 teammates. You guys want to go get something to eat since we're teammates? I mean, we might as well get to know each other. We're going to be in the same squad till we are Chunin. Naruto shrugged. I guess. I have nothing better to do, Naruto said. Sayuri shook her head. I have training to do. And I can't waste. She was cut off as Naruto grabbed her hand and started dragging her. You're coming, whether you like it or not, he declared as he began pulling her down the stairs, followed by a confused Sakura. When they got outside, Sayuri spoke. What are you doing, dope? Let go, you can't force me to go. Naruto turned to her. Watch me. He then looked at the sky. That sounds like a really shitty book for some reason, he said absently, earning confused looks from both of them. He shook his head and gestured to Sakura. You know the village a little better than I do. Lead the way. Sakura walked in front of the 2 people, and Sayuri was glaring at Naruto's hand, which was clasped in hers. She had tried pulling away, but he had an iron grip and wouldn't budge. She tilted her head as they walked. His arm was so much tanner than hers, and her skin was pale, which didn't make sense since she trained almost every day outside. She then realized how warm his hand was, and it almost felt pleasant to hold. She shook her head at those thoughts. She had no time for romance, all that mattered was killing Itachi. But when she did that, she could maybe. Naruto's voice interrupted her thoughts. Hey, you alive? I said we're here. She looked up and saw one of the many Akimichi restaurants in front of her. Sakura says it has good food. Come on. He followed her gaze. I'll let go if you promise to eat with us. You don't even have to talk. She nodded slowly, and he let go of her hand. She immediately missed it, and was about to voice it, but she held her tongue just in time and followed Naruto inside. Sakura was talking to the man at the counter, arranging a table for the 3 of them. Naruto, who was now smiling, that Sayuri was joining them, looked at the polite man who was talking to Sakura, and his smile slowly vanished. It was that man. From that night. The one with the knife. But, how? Itachi had told him that everyone that was there was dead. Unless, the man left as soon as he came. The man looked at Naruto with a smile, until he locked eyes with the blonde. His smile slowly faded. He recognized those blue eyes, but from where? He thought for a few seconds and then it came to him. You? He growled out, his eyes forming deadly daggers as he glared at him. Naruto's eyes showed what seemed to be fear. What about him? Sakura asked in a confused tone, not sure why this man was glaring at her new teammate and friend. The man shifted to Sakura and pointed at Naruto. He's a demon. He's not welcome here, he shouted. Naruto unconsciously tightened the scarf around his face, his eyes stinging for what felt like tears, memories of that terrible night flooding back in like a broken dam. The crowd was now looking at them, gathering around the Genin team. Get out. Get out, the man shouted. Naruto slowly backed up. Girls, I'm going to, go. I don't think they want me here, he said, glancing around nervously. The man behind the counter walked up to Naruto and pushed him away. No, we don't. Now get out, he shouted. Naruto looked at the ground. I'm out, he yelled back. The man's face twisted into a fit of rage. He pulled out a knife, a familiar one, the exact one he used to cut Naruto with when he was 5. I'll teach you to watch your tongue, Demon SC. He couldn't finish as he found a shuriken in his throat, courtesy of Naruto, whose hand was outstretched. You will never, ever, hurt me again, Naruto whispered, only loud enough for Sakura and Sayuri to hear. Each of them had puzzled looks on their faces. An Anbu appeared between Naruto and the now dead man, and he looked at Naruto. What happened? She demanded. She had a cat mask on with purple hair flowing behind her. He broke a law today, and around 8 years ago. Both which were the punishment for death. I wish she had to go to Ibiki though. He finished the statement in a low whisper. The Anbu looked at the dead body, and the knife that was held in his hands. Is that? She began. Naruto nodded. Please don't remind me, cat. She nodded remorsefully and took the corpse and shunshined away, leaving a stunned crowd and 2 genin. You just killed someone, came Sakura's shocked voice. Naruto nodded sadly. I know. I wish I reacted better than that. He deserved to die, believe me, but it wasn't my place. I'm sorry you 2 had to witness that. It wasn't his first kill, and he knew it wasn't going to be his last. But he didn't like the fact he killed a civilian. He was a trained ninja, and he was an angry waiter. Naruto turned away from the 2. I'll see you girls tomorrow. I don't have much of an appetite now, he whispered as he vanished out of sight, which even further confused the girls. He didn't run or jump. He vanished. And it wasn't a shushin, they always left leaves, right? The next day, Naruto appeared at Training Ground 7 with bags under his eyes at 8:30 p.m. He couldn't sleep the previous night, for he had nightmares about the event 8 years ago. Sakura looked worriedly at Naruto, while Sayuri did her best to ignore him. Neither of them knew what the reason of what happened yesterday, but figured that it wasn't their place to ask him. He would tell them when he was ready. You look like you didn't sleep at all last night, Sakura said. Naruto shook his head. I didn't. He then pulled out an apple from his cloak and bit into it with a crunch. Sakura rose an eyebrow, her worried face now gone. Why didn't you listen to Kakashi-sensei? He told us not to eat, she said. Naruto shrugged. Correction, he suggested that we didn't eat. I don't know how your female bodies work, he said, motioning to the two girls. But I, however, need food to get energy before a survival test. He then threw an apple at both girls, who caught them. Eat. You'll need it. Smartest. Sayuri whispered before she bit into the apple, and realized it tasted really good. Where did you get this? She asked softly. She had eaten apples before in the village, but never had one ever tasted so good. Sakura nodded eagerly as well, her cheeks filled with the apple. Naruto smiled warmly at the two, tilting his head and closing his eyes, to let them know that he was. When I was little, I lived in an apple tree in the forest away from the village. It has big branches and supplied me with food when I didn't have any. Sakura rose an eyebrow. Why weren't you at home? She asked innocently. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at her. Unlike you, I didn't have the luxury of a nice warm home, or a family. They died a few minutes after I was born, he said, causing a pang of guilt go through both the girls. What about? Sayuri began, but was cut off. The orphanage. Yeah, they kicked me out when I was old enough to walk. Sadly, Hokage-sama, who was the only one nice to me at the time, didn't know. Sayuri looked at the ground. But that's enough of my sob story. I mean, we all have ours, don't we? Sayuri slowly nodded. Sakura shook her head. I haven't lost anything. Now I feel bad because you two had it bad. Naruto shook his head. It's fine. You're lucky. Don't take what you have for granted, you never know when it'll disappear. Sakura nodded. Kakashi, who was watching his new students, decided to come out of the bushes. Hi guys. Sakura reprimanded Kakashi for being late. Yeah, a black cat crossed my path on my way here, and I had to take the long way around. Naruto looked at his teacher lazily. Lies. But I don't care. Let's get this exercise going. I don't like my time wasted, he said slightly angrily. Kakashi nodded and held up two bells. Okay, the exercise is to take these two bells away from me before noon. If you do, you pass and get lunch. He motioned to the lunch boxes behind him. The one who doesn't get the bell, fails, and is sent back to the academy. Okay. Everyone nodded, understanding the rules. Now, start. Sakura and Sayuri disappeared in the forest surrounding the training ground, but Naruto just stood there, eyeing his teacher with calculating eyes. A challenger already. How nice. Kakashi said as he took out a book and began reading it. Naruto went up to the man. Can I have a bell please? Kakashi gave Naruto a questioning look before nodding and throwing him a bell. Thank you. What? Sayuri and Sakura's voice rang out through the forest. Naruto chuckled before chucking the bell in Sakura's direction. You can have it, Sakura. Sayuri, I'll get the other one. He looked at Kakashi, who was still reading his book. This one is going to be harder to get, you know. Naruto nodded before making a hand sign, forming 10 shadow clones, and sending them towards Kakashi. Kakashi beat them all without much trouble, not even looking away from his book. Naruto smirked, getting the memories from the clones. Now I know a little bit of your fighting style, Naruto said before he pulled out 2 shuriken and threw them at his sensei. Kakashi dodged it easily and gave Naruto an unimpressed look. Naruto smirked before suddenly, he pulled on an almost invisible thin wire that were connected to the shuriken. He watched as a surprised Kakashi was caught by the shuriken. Naruto then heard someone shout a jutsu, and a large fireball seemed to engulf Kakashi in their flames. Sayuri stood there and glared at Naruto. I'll get my own bell, thank you very much, she said distastefully. Naruto shrugged. As you wish, he said before he saw Kakashi running towards him. Lesson 1, Taijutsu. Kakashi yelled as he engaged Naruto. Naruto blocked a small punch and tried to send one of his own, but his feet were swept from under him. Sayuri jumped over the boy, and threw kunai at Kakashi, who grabbed it in midair back at Sayuri. Naruto quickly jumped up, and blocked the kunai with his small sword. He looked at Sayuri, and made a quick nod to Kakashi. She gave a curt nod, and both ran at the man, one with a kunai in hand, another a sword. Kakashi drew his own kunai out and blocked, and dodged the swipes. Naruto then disappeared to the other end of the field, confusing Kakashi. Naruto then pulled out a 3-pronged kunai, startling Kakashi severely. There's no way he knows the jutsu. Does he? Naruto threw the special-made kunai at Kakashi, and stood still as if waiting for something. The kunai hit the tree beside Kakashi, and Naruto disappeared. He does know it, he thought as he looked at the tree where the kunai was. Nothing. He then put his hands at his waist, and found the other bell gone. He looked up and saw that Sayuri had it in her hands, a smirk on her face. Sakura emerged from the trees and held up her own bell. We did it, we pass. she shouted happily. Naruto smiled underneath his scarf until Kakashi spoke. Actually, Sakura and Sayuri pass. Naruto fails and will be sent back to the academy. Naruto shrugged. Meh. At least I helped my teammates. He then found a bell by his foot. I didn't earn it. If it wasn't for your weird kunai distraction, I would have never got it. Another bell fell beside the other. Thank Kami, he doesn't know Flying Thunder God. Kakashi thought. I didn't earn it either. You gave it to me. Sakura said. Kakashi smiled under his mask. Finally, a team who gets it. You pass. Kakashi said with a nice smile. The lesson was teamwork. You three showed plenty of that, especially you and Sayuri Naruto. Naruto, I smiled. Thank you. Naruto replied, a happy grin under his scarf. We passed. Sakura shouted. Sayuri let a smirk get on her face. Thank you, Naruto. She whispered under her breath, so no one could hear her. Kakashi smiled. Now, Team 7 is now official. He said with a thumbs up. Naruto rose an eyebrow. What is this? An anime? Come on, sensei, that's so cliché. Naruto said as he began walking away, followed by both Sakura and Sayuri. Kakashi's sweat dropped. And here I thought they liked me. He said. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.